Hey, well, welcome to Faith and Fitness Fridays. My name is Joe Alvarado. Thank you again for sharing, listening, commenting. This is the community where faith and fitness come together. Sometimes we talk about faith, sometimes we talk about fitness. Today, I think the two are going to come together when we have today's conversation. But the goal of this podcast is for you to be motivated to live a healthier life, and also to understand God better, and just to overall improve where you're at. And so I'm with my good friend Lou today. Thank you so much, man, for being here. This is a guy that we're going to get to know over the next few minutes, and we actually grew up together.
40 years?
Yeah, 40 years. We literally lived across the street from one another, and I remember getting in trouble together, riding the same bus together, staying the night at each other's house, going to the movies together. I mean, just you name it.
Your
man.
family babysat me.
Yeah.
I got in trouble at your house, I get spanked by your dad, and then go home and get spanked by my dad.
Exactly, man. I was thinking about that, and I remember a time when I don't know if you remember this, but you guys had these red rocks in front of your house. Yeah, those lava rocks.
Cars?
Yeah. We threw them at cars, dude.
And the guy stopped?
Yes. He literally stopped and called us out and talked to your mom, walked across the street. I was like, I'm not going to walk across the street. This guy's going to know where I live.
You took off.
Well, he followed me. And I got in trouble, man. So, yeah, he went and told my mom and dad, and so that was the end of that,
You got whipped twice.
Yeah. So, anyway, man, we go way back.
Yeah,
so
it's good. It's good to be here, man.
Amazing,
Thanks.
Man, to reconnect. And a few years ago, I saw you on the softball field.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't play with you were playing at a more elite level, and so we were just kind of crossing paths. But to reconnect and to hear a little bit of your story, man, was just amazing, because the way you communicated it, to me at that time was just like mind blowing.
When you grow up with somebody, as long as we didn't see each other for almost 20 years, I believe, since high school, a little bit, and then after that, like, you don't miss a beat.
Right.
But you also, at the same time, like, it's a completely different person.
Yeah.
And knowing you as well as I do and respecting you as well as I do, I had to share a little bit with you. You know, 'cause it's a journey, man. Everything's a journey.
So one of the things that you do now is you're a motivational speaker. And, man, again, by the way you just communicated to me when we connected on the softball field, I knew this guy can impact some lives. And what exactly do you talk about, and what are the things that you do when you get in front of an audience?
Well, first of all, go back about my story. Like, coming up January 21st, I'll be clean and sober 10 years.
Right on, man.
And so, that's
good for you.
It's a big date for me. It's almost like a rebirth.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I share, it's not like I go and I charge and have people pay me money. That's not what it's about. It's about my experience, strength, and hope on my recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction.
Yeah.
So what happened to me is when I was at my end, my bottom, nobody around me could understand that I was suffering.
Okay.
And my parents would always tell me, why don't you stop drinking? Why don't you stop doing drugs? You're going to lose your kids, and then my kids' moms they took the kids from me, saying, why don't you figure out your drug and alcohol problem? And I didn't. How do I do that?
So it's something you wanted to do, just at that moment you didn't know how.
I mean, it's just the obsession to drink and do drugs was more powerful than me stopping for my kids. Wow. And for my family and for anybody who told me just quit. I wanted to, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know that I was suffering from a disease.
So literally at that time you would say that there wasn't anything that you knew of that can actually help you to stop.
Here's the kicker, though, man. Like, I had got my first DUI when I was 17.
Okay.
I had been in anger management class a couple times, which I got kicked out of.
Wow.
And in those classes and in the DUI classes, there was writing on the wall.
Yeah.
I just wasn't ready to hear it.
How do you get kicked out of an anger management? Just anger?
Angry.
Okay, all right. I assume that, but I just man.
I fought a lot.
Okay.
And when I was a bouncer at bars, and I was a bouncer at some bars where, there was a rough crowd, and I got put into one specifically by City of Aurora's police chief.
Okay.
And the instructor called me sensitive.
Wow.
And so the story I used to say was I tore the top of the desk off and I threw it at her. I did throw the top of the desk at her, but I didn't tear it off. It was one of those old desks that fold over, and I got stuck in it.
You were like sitting there
and she called me sensitive, so I wanted to leave the class, and I couldn't get out. And so it was loose, and it came off.
Okay. Wow.
And so I threw it. And but it's just when you're not ready, the one thing is when you're not ready to hear it, you're not ready to hear it.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, the solution was in the booze and the drugs.
Okay.
Because it did everything I wanted it to do. It took away the fear. It took away the shame, the anger. It took away the fact that I wasn't seeing my kids. It took the fact that I wasn't a good person, that I couldn't honor a commitment. And every time those emotions would come up, I would drink or get high because it took it away.
Yeah.
And so with taking that away, it worked until it stopped working.
Do you think that's the same story for everybody who deals with that?
In my experience, I believe that it's around that. It's an effect produced. It's an effect produced. I mean, people drink and do drugs because the effect produced. I mean, it's plain and simple. But what does the effect produce? My effect was it took away the reality that I was hiding from.
Gotcha.
And so it's now when I talk to people, it's not so much it's a motivational speaker. It's my heart reaching out to them saying, I've been there. So it's my experience that I'm sharing with people than more than it is trying to motivate them.
So I would imagine, because I haven't had, those types of addictions in my life, but even the way that you communicated your story to me made an impact on my life. And I'm wondering, like, how has that helped other people? Like you get in front of a small group or a large group, and what does that do? I mean, because just like you said, you're connecting with them on a I've been there basis. How does that change the game as far as anybody else they've ever heard talk to them about their issues?
You're a man of service, right?
Yeah.
How does it make you feel?
Man, that's a great question. When somebody learns something new about God, or they performing a marriage, and they look into each other's eyes and they get marriage for the first time right before. I guess that answers that. Yeah.
So when people who weren't armed with the facts about alcoholism or drug addiction would tell me to stop, I didn't understand what they were saying.
Okay.
When people who had recovered from drug addiction and alcohol addiction, when they would tell me, I've been there, here's what I've done, they would show me experience. They would share their experience with me. Now I'm listening.
Gotcha.
So my experience is only like me as an alcoholic can help serve another struggling alcoholic, sharing my experience on my recovery, because now we have something in common. Now I can start sharing the pain, the fear, the anger, the disgust, the shame, and all that stuff. I can start sharing that with them and say, man, I've been there.
Yeah.
And there's a process, that I've gone through it, and it was beautiful for me that somebody shared that with me.
Yeah.
And so now for me to do it is not I don't do it for money or anything. And here's the thing about it is that when I'm sharing my experience with another recovering or somebody who's struggling with drug addiction or alcoholism, I'm sharing my experience from my heart. Like it's God intervening in this conversation. And I'm not thinking about getting loaded. I'm not thinking about being selfish. I'm not thinking about burning down the house. I'm not thinking about, all these things that, I used to think of before, and I drink or drug over it. Now I'm thinking about how I can be of service to this other person. Wow. So when I leave that conversation or when I'm in that conversation, God takes over.
Yeah.
And the rest takes its course.
Yeah.
So I walk away fulfilled.
Gotcha.
And that's better than any drug, any drink, anything that's ever taken over my life.
That's amazing, man. So can you identify, like you said, January is going to be 10 years. What's that one thing that clicked in your mind or your heart or whatever that told you, or that person that helped you, or whatever it was that said, today's it, and today's when I do something about this?
So, in January 21st, 2008, I was beat up, but it wasn't at my worst. My worst was when, on October 10th, on my mom's birthday in 2007, when they had to rush me to the hospital. And so they rushed me to the hospital. Yeah, it was
drinking too much?
They couldn't find me, and they finally found me, and I was at my end. They rushed me to the hospital, rushed me in the emergency room, and next thing I know, I went under, and I was in a sedated coma for 5 days.
Wow.
You know, and the day I got out of the hospital, because they kept me for a couple days later, because my body was so sickened as well, because the poison I was putting in it, I got loaded that night. It's the only thing I knew how to do, because I was removed from alcohol
you get out
for so
and you do
long
it again.
that my mind starts working.
Wow.
And so my mind starts working, the raw emotions start coming back, the fear, the resentment, the, you know, not being a dad, not, you know, came back. And the only solution I knew how to do was to get drunk. Wow. You know, so then you move a couple months forward, I'm doing this revolving door, like I can't keep going on like this, but it's the only thing I know that's keeping me sane.
Yeah.
Or working, not saying I wasn't in my right mind, but.
Sure.
So January 21st, 2008 comes around, and I'm on my knees, and I'm looking down the bottom of a vodka bottle, and I mean handles. I used to go through handles.
Wow. And
there was a bottom part of it left, and I just, some reason, I mean, I don't believe in God. I don't have this faith, and I just said, if you're there, you know, I said, God, if you're there, take me.
Yeah.
Or help me do something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was at the point where I looked at that vodka and I was like, if I drink this, it's going to kill me. If I don't drink it, I'm going to die.
Wow.
So that's that fork in the road. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
That day, something inside of me changed. You know, I don't know what it was. It's undefining. And, you know, you talk to a lot of, you know, alcoholics, drug addicts that ever, you know, people who eat, people who gamble, people who cut, whatever it is that their addiction is, at that point in time when they change, it's undefinable, you know. So what I called my mom, you know, and they came and got me, and, you know, and I went, you know, I went home, and I ended up in the hospital again that night, you know, and I was done. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. And so, you know, I come home, and I remember I was in intensive outpatient therapy earlier in 2007 for drug addiction. I was trying to start a process of getting my kids back, and no, I called my counselor, you know, from then, because I asked him, you know, if he'd help me out, and so they got me into rehab. Yeah. And in rehab, it's where I experienced what I was talking about, when somebody sat across from me and shared with me their experience, strength, and hope on their recovery. Yeah. And how that looked. And so now you had me. Yeah. Now that's why when I sit across from somebody else, you know, I'm giving it back, you know, and I'm not worried about drinking, lying, doing all these things. You know, God is intervening in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the part of recovery that I love.
Wow. So what do you say to the person who lives with the addict, the person who is on the receiving end? Because that's something that you told me was that they go through it. They go through it. The people who live with the person, you know. So what do you say to that person?
You know, being an alcoholic and an addict, when we're in our addiction, like, we hold our family members hostage. Okay. Like we hold them in an emotional hostage, to say, because nobody wants to see anybody hurt. You know, nobody has hate in their heart. I truly don't believe, you know, it's a family member, somebody close. Like, my parents, you know, didn't want to see me hurt, but I was hurting them, and I was emotionally holding them. My kids' moms, like, I was emotionally holding them hostage because of my behavior. You know, like, I'm supposed to be their dad, and I'm supposed to be my kid's son, and I'm not doing that. I'm not fulfilling that obligation. So there's anger that occurs, you know, there's depression that occurs. There's just, it's not a good situation. So I hold them in emotional hostage, you know. So when you're living with an active alcoholic or drug addict, you know, sometimes when you're enabling that, you're sick as well. Okay. And so my suggestion to people that are living with an active alcoholic or drug addict is there's help for you too. You know, there's programs out there. There's Al-Anon, you know, there's psychologists, you know, therapists, you know, that are willing to talk to you. But my thing is what worked for me the most is that when I sat down across from another alcoholic or drug addict,
Mm-hmm.
they started sharing their solution with me on they recovered. Now you had my attention.
Yeah, yeah.
But I never learned from my therapist. I went to see a therapist. He was 25 years old, and he was tall, and he was white, and he never drank.
Yeah.
He didn't get me. He didn't understand me. Same thing as those that are struggling with the family member that's drug in an active alcoholic drug addict. There's other people out there who have dealt with that. And when they deal with that, they can also be of service to you and help you, and they can dig that process. Just like an alcoholic working with another alcoholic.
Yeah. Are some people, is it hopeless, some of the situations?
Absolutely. I mean, no. I mean, look at me.
Yeah.
I live a beautiful life today. You know, I was a gutter drunk. Yeah. You know, I was face down, and I looked at the world, and today my life is amazing. My life is absolutely amazing. Yeah. You know, but the thing is like, one thing I want to go back to is that for those of you that are leaving with somebody in active alcohol or drug addiction, like what I want to say is that we will love you to death. Mm. We will love you to death, and they will. Like, that's the thing is that what I mean by that is that we enable people because we don't want to see them hurt, or we think we got their cure by keep taking them in, keep giving them food, and keep doing this, and you know that's enabling them. And that if I had my mom and dad that kept taking me in and would keep giving me stuff every time I went out and did the same stuff over and over again, I might be dead. Thank God I had my kids' mothers who took the kids from me. I was a threat around my kids.
Wow.
I was a threat around my parents, and they stopped. And when they stopped, reality hit.
Yeah. Is there a definable line to where the people who love you say enough's enough? Is it obvious, or is it something they just have to? Is every situation different, or how does it
every
work?
situation's different? Yes,
okay.
But I think we passed that line. I think people pass that line.
Okay. They let it go overboard.
Absolutely, because they think that they can love them back to sobriety. They think that they can help them and hug them back to sobriety, or however it may be. And I'm not saying you can't, and I'm not saying abandon the family member. Stop and cut them off and send them out to the wolves. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that a drug addict and alcoholic are very, very selfish. I was very, very selfish and self-centered.
Yeah.
My thought was not to be nice or care about you, was just to use them for what I could. And so at that time, like, if you're going to keep giving me, I'm going to keep taking. Yeah. And I don't understand that. So that's what I talk about, is like, we're not safe to be around. So when those of you that are living with that, like, there is a process for you to get help, because my parents and those around me, like, I never stopped to get help when they told me to.
Okay.
I stopped to get help when I was ready.
Okay.
You know, and they did what they had to do to get away from me. So for those of you that are struggling with that, like, it's very hard to deal with an alcoholic or drug addict. They're gonna be ready when they're ready.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. But you living with that person, on the other hand, like, there is help out there for you. Like, there is, because when you keep enabling somebody, you're sick as well.
Yeah. And I gotta imagine that's so hard, because you love that person. Like you said earlier, there's this emotional connection. You know, they're your spouse, they're your kids, they're your uncle, they're your parents. And how do you not love them? How do you not, and that's there's a line there. And I guess even getting help would help them identify what's enabling and what isn't, and what's already crossed over and what hasn't, I guess.
It's the hardest thing in the world to watch somebody you love tear apart their life.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing in the world, and it's the threat that I was to everybody around me. So like I said, thank God they took the kids from me. Thank God my parents were tired of my stuff and got me out, because they could not watch me do that anymore, because there was love in their heart for me. And and they did what they had to do for themselves. And for those of you that are out there struggling, do what you got to do for yourself, because like I said, I was never going to get sober on their dime. I was never going to say, you're right, I'm hurting everybody, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
It wasn't in me to do that.
Okay.
I didn't know how. I'm sick. I'm suffering from a disease I don't know I have.
Wow.
And that's the hardest part, is I'm sick and I don't know it.
Yeah. So at the center of it all, though, God has kind of been that your rock. Since that first question, that if you're there, help me. and then God's kind of played a role in your whole recovery
Absolutely.
process.
So you look back on that in that day on January 21st, because I didn't believe in God.
Yeah.
I had lost my faith because I had all these foxhole prayers like, God, if you're there, if you get me out of this, I'll never do it again. And I did it again. And then I lose faith in that because it stops working, right? Because I keep getting myself deeper and deeper into a hole.
Sure.
And so the whole time in my first part of recovery, I didn't believe in God. But what happened was I started going through this process of recovery and started to tell people bits and truths and pieces about myself. And slowly it started to chip away.
Okay.
And my heart started to open up and God entered, and God entered my heart. And then, I realized then that moment on January 21st, it was God that saved my life.
Well, I like that because, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that struggle with God and the belief that he can help. And just the idea that it was a process for you. Yeah. And we don't have to just, turn on the lights and I believe in God. I mean, for some people it's like that, but for others it's like, God, I'm gonna allow you to work your way, through my life little by little and to where now it's solid. And I like that because some people need to hear that.
That process didn't come from me sitting down and trying to figure out God. That process came from other men sitting across from me, sharing their story about recovery, their struggle from addiction, and they were sharing their heart with me. What they were sharing was their God with me. Yeah. God was working through them to get to me. And so now today, I'm a conduit of God. I am a straight conduit of God because when I talk to people, I share my heart, I share my experience. That connection is there. Whether they believe it or not, they know it's there. Yeah. And that's what God intervenes in that conversation. And that's what happened to me. So my experience was, I got it. Yeah. My experience was through other people letting God work through them, touch my life. And that's what saved me.
Is there any last thing you would say? I mean, we've talked about a lot, but what else would you say to that person struggling or the people receiving the struggle from a person that they live with?
So for those of you out there that are struggling, the biggest thing for me is I felt hopeless. I felt that I was never going to change. This was going to be the rest of my life. I was going to go on to a bitter end, drinking vodka in an apartment. I thought that's what it was. And I'll tell you today, the moment that I got sick and tired of being sick and tired and I decided to change the direction of my path was the moment everything changed. Mm-hmm. I got reborn. I mean, I was a person that gets to live two lives.
Wow, that's powerful.
My experience from my past life and my experience from my life today. And so I'm telling you, there's hope, and the hope is beautiful because the life I live today, the life that God has created for me is far, far better than anything I could ever plan for myself. Wow. Because for me, showing up is most of the battle. Yeah. Now I just open my hands out. And the biggest thing for me humbly is just saying, I'm done. What here? Let those that can help. My pride was going to kill me. Yeah. My thoughts of what I knew was right was going to kill me. But so you're not hopeless. You're not unique. You're not different. We've all been there. With these stories that we share that we want to hold to ourselves that we're ashamed of and that I was ashamed of and that I was afraid of. When I started telling people that, they would look back at me and say, I've been there. I've done that. Yeah. You're not alone. Wow. And so it's comforting to say that you're not alone. If you're struggling with this disease, you are not alone. I'm available to help. I know a ton of people that may be in a different circumstance that I'm sure that can help other people with. That's the beautiful thing about this recovery circle is that, we all have our experiences and we can help. Yeah. And that's, I believe now, is what I talked about in the beginning. It's not so much I'm a motivational speaker. I just share my heart and my experience with others. Yeah. Because that's what was given, that's what was given to me. Yeah, yeah. That's the only thing I know how to do, and for those that are living with an active alcoholic or drug addict, the scariest thing that you can do is to keep helping them that you think you got the answer for them. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part. The hardest part is watching somebody destroy their lives and trying to fix it. Unfortunately, when you put booze or drugs in your body, it's a poison. And unfortunately, we lose people that way. That's the hard lesson to learn. I'm not saying allow them to keep going on, but get help yourself.
Yeah.
Get help yourself. I mean, that's one thing is that a lot of people don't realize that there's help out there for family members that are struggling with alcoholics or addicts, and that's a tough one. But I'm available, like I'm here to help any way I can.
Thank you.
And one of the biggest things and the best things about this is that when you're in the middle of all this, when you're sharing that experience, strength, and hope, with somebody, my recovery is that, like, I'm not thinking about drinking. I'm not thinking about, all these things. But if I get away from that, if I get away from this God, if I get away from what I'm doing on a regular basis, it's not like I'm going to go out and get drunk tomorrow, but I will act badly because in the end, I'm my problem.
Yeah.
And the alcohol and drugs was a solution. Now I have a different solution. Today I have a solution, of God in my life and living by spiritual principles and being the man that, people look at me as today is who I am.
Yeah. So what are you most proud of? I know there's a lot of things that you've accomplished and thing, but what are you most proud of?
Besides my kids and my family, my wife, that's my pride and joy is my family, my kids. The life I live today is based around them. That's what I'm proud of. But that would go without a doubt to say that. Yeah. But the fact that, coming from where I've come from today is that, I the man that I am, for people to recognize me as a good man. Like, a lot of times people, when I share a little bit of my story, they're like, that know me today.
Sure.
They said, I'd have never guessed, because there's
I was one of those people.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad. There's a lot. In the time, you don't just go out and drink and do drugs and you're a good person.
Well, one of the things that I noticed after we reconnected, even online, is that your posts were so heartfelt.
Yeah.
And they were just so real, man. And that's not easy to do. And I try to, post things and express how I feel, but man, you're really good at it. You're really good at it. And what you post and you have to follow him is just so real. It's so real. So, how do people get a hold of you? How can they find you?
I'm on Facebook, Luis Martinez, Luis Martinez.
You'll see the guy with the same haircut as me on there. Great haircut.
You know what? My phone number's out there. It's everywhere, and I'm not afraid of that. My cell phone is 720-292-7397. You email me at dynasty dynasty @comcast.net.
Cool. And I'll put all that in the show notes on the bottom of the interview. That way they can have that. But man, it's been great, man.
Appreciate it, man.
This has been.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you for asking me to do this.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of this, man.
I appreciate you doing this, man. You're doing a good thing.
Thank you.
You're really doing a good thing. I think more people need to be motivated. They need to hear that people are opening themselves up.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. And again, thanks for listening. This is Joe Alvarado again, faithandfitnessfriday.com. Man, have a great week, and I hope this has been life-changing for you. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.